Right now, it's time for Armed American Radio's Daily Defense with Mark Walters.
Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, round 2 for the week, Tuesday. How the heck are you? Great to be with you today. New stations around the country. I will be filling your prescription for freedom every single day, Monday through Friday, live on Armed American Radio's Daily Defense. Also, the Sunday Monster Cast, growing like a weed. Added another 6 affiliates. We'll be giving them a big shout out on this coming week's Monster Cast. So great to be with you, filling your prescription for freedom 6 days a week. I'm joined right now by my good friend and your good friend, famed trainer, self-defense expert, co-author with me and author of too many books to mention, Rob Pincus. Rob, welcome to the program. I've got you for the hour. Going to be a provocative topic today. No question, but it's a conversation that has to be had. Welcome to the show, brother.
Great to be here, Mark. Thanks. It's always good to talk with you. As you said, today's topic is one I'd rather not be talking about, but it's incredibly important for all American gun owners.
I couldn't agree with you more, which is exactly why we got together today and decided this conversation has to be had. In fact, I'm not going to be shocked if I take this hour and run it on a Sunday upcoming Monster Cast to get it on even a bigger platform, because the conversation is that important. Let's start with the National Rifle Association. The two of us, I've been critical. You've seen the columns that I've written about the National Rifle Association, what I deem to be mismanagement at the top. I've been very open about the fact that there needs to be a change. You, on the other hand, have been far more critical than I and are at the forefront of some change that is occurring and some legal maneuvering by the NRA and Ackerman. And I want to get this all out in the open before we start this conversation. I think it's vital. So I'll let you take it away. What are we trying to, are you trying to wreck the NRA, bro? Is that what's going on here? That's what people are saying.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are afraid of. I think on two different fronts, they're wrong. First of all, I don't think anyone from inside of the firearms community is trying to wreck the NRA. Quite frankly, the leadership of the NRA as it currently stands has done a fairly good job of wrecking the reputation of the NRA and the efficacy of the NRA over the last 10 to 20 years. And that's what we're trying to wreck. We're trying to fix the situation at the NRA so that they are a strong advocacy and education organization, as they have been historically for almost 150 years. But the last 10 to 20 years, they've become less and less effective. Obviously, there's all sorts of allegations of financial malfeasance, wrongdoings, cronyism, whatever you want to call it. The old guard needs to go, and there are some specific reforms that I think most American gun owners will see as a path forward, and we're hoping to affect that change from within the gun community rather than have the New York Attorney General's office shut the NRA down because the way they're handling money and the way the Board of Directors are being treated or not being utilized or not being allowed to actually run the organization. Or we have the situation, obviously, where there's plenty of anti-gunners and pro-gun control people that would love to see the NRA go away just on principle as a political victory. And obviously, we don't want that to happen from either one of those fronts. We want the change to come from within the gun community. But it's been very clear that the change will not come from within the NRA. And that's why we're taking action outside of the NRA's standard operating procedure.
How is your relationship, because you've been very vocal, how is your relationship with NRA management now, or is there a relationship? Or is anybody talking to you? Are they shunning you? What's going on?
Well, I have a long history with the NRA, going all the way back into the 1990s with some overlap in charity events and just socially and just being involved in the gun industry and knowing a lot of the people who are still players in the leadership of the NRA today. I worked with the NRA very closely. It's a matter of public record that we developed a DVD program starting in 2005. Those training DVDs were distributed almost primarily, probably about 95% of the millions of DVDs that we distributed and sold were sold through the NRA program. And they were licensed products with the American Handgunner logo on there. And we did the NRA Personal Defense newsletter for years, all of that through Personal Defense Network and through the parent company that I work with called TN Marketing. So there's always been a very close relationship. I should say historically, there's been a close relationship between me and the NRA. I even ran for the Board of Directors in 2014 until I was asked by the leadership to step aside because they were concerned about a conflict of interest because we were working together so closely on the DVDs, which now is ironic in
Boy,
all
isn't
of the
it?
Revelations. All of those revelations that have been shared with so many people, getting insider deals and cronyism and Board of Directors members who have direct financial ties to Ackerman McQueen and the NRA. But yeah, there's a long history there. And really what it does, I wouldn't say that it like inspires or motivates the current action, but it definitely educates and informs my position on what the real problems are inside of the NRA today.
All right, let's go now to listeners. If you have any questions for me, I don't take calls live on the air, but I want you to email them to me, mark@armedamericanradio.org. If you have a question for Rob or you have a question for me, if I can get at it today live, I will. If not, I probably won't because the conversation will be very fluid now, but I will get them to Rob and we'll get answers for you. As I said, I may very well play or replay this as an encore broadcast on an upcoming Monstercast for good reason. I'm sure you'll understand by the time this hour is over. Rob, then let's move now to, did I miss any? Is there anything you want me to ask you about the NRA that I haven't yet done or you haven't been able to answer yet before we move on?
No, I think that's it. I think kind of that was a long answer to your short question. Of course, I still talk to a lot of people inside of the NRA. I still talk to people that work for Ackerman McQueen. There are several board of directors I'm in contact with regularly, as well as people who are employees. So it's certainly not the kind of thing where like lines have been drawn and people aren't communicating even across the different positions people have. I think, even the NRA management and the president, the current president, Meadows of the NRA board, has said that, yeah, there's been some problems and we are addressing them and we are moving forward. Obviously, I think the American gun owner is better served by a different group of leadership taking the NRA into the next phase of its existence.
All right, now it's a matter of public record, so I want to throw this out there, but you have in fact been subpoenaed in that battle between the NRA and Ackerman McQueen, and you've in fact been subpoenaed to talk on behalf of the NRA. I want to make that very clear. Did I miss anything there?
No, I don't know if the lawyers or if the NRA would specifically say on behalf of. I have been subpoenaed by the NRA to give them information or provide documents as I can that presumably will help them in their civil lawsuit against Ackerman McQueen. So I'm not a party to the suit. Okay. I'm not in any legal jeopardy. And I am currently in discussions with the lawyers for the NRA about how to move forward after that subpoena. All
right. And I just, for the record, listener, I want you to know that that's information that's out there. So I want you to make sure that you have it as this conversation progresses. I don't want somebody to come back to me and go, well, why didn't you mention this when it was out there? That may have changed. It's out there. It's open. We know about it. He just addressed it. All right. Let's go now to Save the 2A. We've got about 2.5 minutes left in this segment, so I want to start here with the leadership. Well, actually, before we even get to leadership, tell us what Save the 2A is.
Save the 2A is an organization that has just been founded. It was actually the idea of Anthony Garcia was really the guy who was behind this idea. He was very instrumental in the fight for the recall here in Colorado, very politically active guy, very tuned in American gun owner. Anthony Garcia and several other people, Andy Lander, Steve Hoback, who both have been very closely associated with the NRA and worked for the NRA. Ron Carter, who joined us at the members meeting as sort of your everyday guy, NRA member who has a lot of concern about what's going to be happening in the future of the NRA and what's happening right now. And I are the leadership, are the board members, but there's plenty of other people giving input to the stance of Save the Second Amendment. And the idea of Save the 2A is we want the NRA to be better. We want the change, again, to come from within the gun community. We want to, if you want to call it a watchdog organization, if you want to call it an advocacy group, whatever it is, it's a nonprofit entity that's been formed here in Colorado that now has a national presence and a voice to help American gun owners rally around the reforms and the changes that need to happen within the NRA community so that maybe then we don't need Save the 2A in 6 months or 6 years when the NRA is back on the proper path.
I think it's very important for the benefit of listeners. I'm going to take to the break with this, Rob. Let me explain a little bit about each individual. Anthony Garcia, the president, is also a current NRA, he's worked directly alongside, he works with current board member Timothy Knight of the NRA. And I want to point out that Anthony Garcia is an NRA Lifetime Endowment member. He is a current lifetime member. Ron Carter, who you just heard Rob mention, is living in Colorado, as is Anthony Garcia, and is also an NRA certified personal protection inside the home and range safety officer and an NRA member. Rob Pincus, of course, NRA member, works very closely, ran for the board. You're hearing him on the program right now. Steve Hoback, a board member, also a proud member of the NRA's training department, part of the education and the training division, and he wants to see the focus of that area, among others, fixed and corrected within the NRA. He's also an NRA life member and a training counselor. He's the guy that teaches me my NRA certification, if you will. That's where I would get the training from if I wanted to be an NRA certified instructor. Andy Lander, also a board member and a life member of the National Rifle Association and a former employee of the association. So these are the individuals at the top of Save the 2A who are all very, very dedicated to seeing the NRA, and I think it's safe to say, Rob, in the last 30 seconds, get back to their roots, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. Focus on the bigger picture of gun rights advocacy and obviously downsize and start spending the money a lot more wisely.
When we come back after this break, I'm going to go into 5 different bullet points or goals that this organization wants to see reformed at the top of the NRA. I'll be back right after this with Rob Pincus. Don't go away.
Right now, it's time for Armed American Radio's Daily Defense with Mark Walters.
Armed American Radio's Daily Defense. We're going to jump right back into this conversation. A very, very important program today. Rob Pincus joins me. Rob, always a pleasure to have you here, no matter what we're talking about. This is a fascinating topic, a provocative topic. It's, as you just mentioned, we were talking during the break. Sean was kind of potting us together there, which was kind of cool. We were able to talk during the break. And one of our concerns here is this is a different battle than back in the day when Mr. Knox was fighting the battle, because there's much more at stake now. And as you mentioned in the opening segment, you've got New York. That freight train is on the tracks. It's not going to stop. It's going to ram right through Waples Mill Road in Fairfax, Virginia, which is the address of the National Rifle Association headquarters, whether they want it to or not. It's coming. There's nothing they can do to stop it. This is out there public. And I think one of your most telling statements in the opening segment was the fact that we would rather do this now than have somebody like some freakazoid hate fest from the left, or even worse, New York State Attorney Generals changing everything about the NRA using their state law and their anti-gun rhetoric and everything else that goes with it to force those changes, correct?
Right. This change is definitely, somebody said it best up on the podium at the members meeting back about 2 months ago now, when they said, this is a family fight, and family fights aren't pretty, but family fights should be kept within the family. We should be able to solve this inside of the American gun owning community.
I'm hopeful that we can, and I like what I'm seeing here with the Save the 2A. SaveThe2A.org is the website, listener. I would highly recommend that you go there and educate yourself about this. This is a very, very serious effort, and I hope Fairfax is looking at this as a very serious effort as well. Let's start with the 5 goals, or should we start with why reform first? Which one do you want to tackle first?
Well, I think we've talked about why reform. We talked about it previously. If people aren't aware of the problems, they really need to do the research. We could take up the whole rest of the hour talking about what the problems are, what the allegations are. But simply put, the NRA, using their best numbers, which I'm very skeptical of, has 5.5 million members. Those members obviously include a lot of people like me and all the other guys you just mentioned in the last segment who have a lot of concerns about the current NRA. We are not supportive of the current NRA strategies or leadership. So 5.5 million minus the people who are very concerned and very vocal all over the internet, all over the community, you can see it. And then you also have to take out, there's always questions like, how do you remove a deceased life member from your roll? Well, the NRA has never answered that. So, we take that 5.5 million with a big grain of salt, but it's still less than 6% of the total number of American gun owners. So if that doesn't prove a lack of efficacy, and I don't know, what else could. So as far as the NRA's success in terms of bringing in new members and rallying American gun owners around the cause of the Second Amendment, they've been failing. And then when you add on top of that the allegations about all the financial wrongdoings, malfeasance, whatever you want to call it, incredible amounts of spending on luxury items and privileges, amounts of money going to family members and friends, the board of directors, and spouses and girlfriends of the executive committee and the leadership of Akron McQueen. It's really gotten incredibly out of hand. It reminds one of Wounded Warrior Project a few years ago.
It really does.
It maybe even worse in some ways. So I think the why the reform question is pretty obvious, and if it's not, I would suggest people go to AmmoLand. Obviously, AmmoLand, you've been writing for them. Jeff Knox has written for them. I've written for them. Adam Proud has written for them. And, quote unquote, the other side has written for them as well. Marion Hammer at all. So people can learn a lot about the why we need this reform at AmmoLand. It's probably the best one-stop source for gun owners.
Yeah, and I think the short answer, listener, for what Rob is just saying really is the optics are terrible. Whether the optics are bad, it's that simple. And the perception is reality. It's that simple. Perception is reality to most people, and the optics are bad, and there needs to be a change. Okay, let's start with the 5 goals. We'll tackle this one here in the next 3.5 minutes we have in this segment. The first one, smaller board. The NRA's board is made up of 76 individuals. I have never understood how they get anything done with a board that size. That's one of the goals here. Jump on it.
Yeah, I summarized these yesterday in a couple of short bullet points. And what I said for this one is we need to make each director more powerful and therefore more responsible and accountable to the members. You know, one of the problems is you've got a lot of board members who simply, they don't even show up to meetings. They don't cast votes. They're not really engaged. And I think a lot of them understandably think, well, there's 75 other board members that can handle this, or there's plenty of people doing work, or, I'm really here just for this piece of the puzzle. I know there's, one person, for example, who's been very vocal lately and saying she's only involved for the shooting sports side of the NRA. That's what she's focusing on. She's not focusing on these financial issues or the political issues, these things. Well, that you're the board of director of a huge organization that reaches into a lot of different aspects. You can't just pick and choose which one of those aspects you're going to be involved in as one of the directors. However, when you have such a large board, it might be perceived that way, and it certainly has been tolerated and sort of, as you said, the optics on it are that, well, we have different people doing different things. What that means is each individual board member is less powerful and less accountable to the membership, and a smaller board would fix that, among other things.
Not only that, not only accountable to the membership, but also accountable to the executive team, which is also a big part of this. Very quickly, right now, you got some great information on here. Investopedia talking about most corporate boards ranging from 3 to 31 members. Some analysts believe the ideal is 7. I'm a member of a board of the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, our annual meeting. We have about 10 members on that particular board in that ideal. That to me is an ideal size board of directors. The plan that you guys are putting forth at savethe2a.org is proposing reducing the board size from 76 to 31. And I'll be honest with you, I think even 31 is a little high. 25, to me, would be a good number, but I'm going to just throw that out to say that. I don't really know why I feel that way. I think maybe the ability to have a conversation around a round table gets better when you've got 25 or less people, and that makes it easier to talk about some of the issues at hand. 76 is way too big. You cannot have a meaningful discussion with 76 people throwing ideas back and forth and get anything accomplished, and I think that's evident right now. So that's plan number 1. The goal is to reduce the number of directors, and you guys are looking at board from 76 to 31, a significant change. And this would be, even you mentioned here, an unusually large board. It would still make the board approximately 60% leaner than it is now. So every year, NRA members elect 25 board members plus one more elected to for a term at the National Rifle Association annual meeting. If you amend the bylaws to establish a 31-member board, then the ballot for the next 3 years would simply call for electing 10 board members rather than 25. So I think that pares it down pretty well. You want to put an exclamation point on that?
I think your summary was great. Yeah, the idea is to have a significant change, and maybe it's an incremental change. Maybe after a few years at 31 or a decade at 31, we realize, you know what, that really helped. Let's go down to 25. Let's go down to 21 as the NRA narrows its focus. And as we go through the rest of these bullet points, I think you'll see how a narrowly focused Second Amendment advocacy organization is going to be far more powerful and effective than what the NRA has become.
Yeah, a really good takeaway was, as you just said, as the NRA becomes more focused. And I'm going to guess that somewhere in those 5 goals is a more focused NRA. We're going to get ready to take a break here. I don't have enough time to ask a question because I know you'll want to run with it. I hate to have to cut you off. So what we're going to do is when we come back from the break, we're going to go to goal number 2 of the Save the 2A org, and that is limit the directors to 4 consecutive terms. And I'll explain a little bit about that, but suffice to say, according to Board Source, 72% of boards have limits on how many consecutive terms an individual member can serve. The most common limit is 2 terms. That report concluded that term limits help ensure the board's composition reflects its current leadership needs. And I would also say membership as well. When you shorten that term, you're getting more aggressive with the members and you're reflecting more of the membership. We'll continue this fascinating conversation with Rob Pincus right after this. Don't go away, please.
Back to Armed American Radio's Daily Defense with Mark Walters.
A lot to cover with you as we rejoin Armed American Radio's Daily Defense and head into segment 3 on this very, very, very provocative and extremely important conversation. I'm talking with Rob Pincus. We are talking about saving the 2A and SaveThe2A.org. Rob Pincus, welcome back to the studios, Armed American Radio's Daily Defense. We're into 5 goals here. We're going to jump right in at number 2, if that's okay. Did you want to put a mark on anything we said as we head into number 2? You ready to roll?
I'm ready to go.
All right, goal number 2, as I teased at the break, limit directors to 4 consecutive terms. 72% of boards now have limits on how many consecutive terms individual members can serve. The most common limit is 2. Save the 2A is looking at bringing the National Rifle Associations to 4. Are there any limits at the NRA right now by any chance?
There are not.
All right, so 4 terms of what length?
Well, the current length, the way it works is it can be up to 3 years or it could be a single year. The issue really is how many consecutive times that they're eligible can they run. And that's what we're looking at is maximizing the number of times that someone can run for the board of directors in an eligible voting campaign in an eligible year in a row would be 4. And as you noted in the last segment, that's still considered a relatively high number. Usually people are only limited to 2 runs. Now, the way we looked at it was if someone was coming in, so the way it works now from the outside, and they were running for that 76th seat, which of course becomes the 31st seat in the reform plan, then they would only be there for 1 year. So this would actually give them a 4-year time to serve if they ran for 4 consecutive NRA annual meeting voting sessions for the 31st seat, which is currently called the 76th seat. Now, I realize that gets a little confusing, but the math essentially of 4 consecutive terms, I think, was really designed around the idea that someone coming in from the outside to influence the NRA, the outside of the current board of directors, would get at least a 4-year opportunity to do that if they had the support of the membership.
And I'm going to leave that answer stand right there. I think that was excellent. It was self-explanatory. I want to, in the essence of time, move on. One thing that I do want to point out, though, without limits, and you mentioned this on the site, without term limits, it's very difficult for a board to bring in new talent and leadership. And as you quote, I'll quote from your page here, which is essential for the long-term health of the leadership body. As the needs of the organization change over time, so should the composition of the board to ensure that the board has the necessary skill sets, perspectives, and networks for the future rather than the past. You know, and I can go that step further and tie that to the membership. You're going to get a whole lot of, I have a feeling you're going to see the NRA explode in due time. I think these problems will fix themselves. I think the NRA will move forward. It's going to have to. The alternative is not anything anybody wants to see. Those that do want to see it, I think, are just throwing a bunch of bravado and machismo out there that really doesn't need to be heard. America needs a strong NRA. Leaning it down like this is a great way to do it. So excellent information on this site. I mean, fantastic information on this site. So we're going to move over now to number 3. Number 3, attendance. Explain what you mean by attendance.
So one of the issues that a lot of people have picked up on over the last few years is that there are certain board members who simply don't attend the members' meetings. They don't participate, and it goes the full spectrum. You go from someone like Marion Hammer, who's a past president of the NRA, who has a huge feeling of entitlement to represent the NRA. She gets paid an enormous amount of money by the NRA every year, in excess of $200,000 for her, quote unquote work that she does on behalf of the NRA in Florida and elsewhere. But she doesn't show up to members' meetings, or she doesn't show up to the board meetings. I believe she attended one this year, which was an anomaly that she actually showed up for it. And then you go to the other end where you go to someone like some of the celebrities, a Tom Selleck or a Karl Malone, or even a Ted Nugent, who's a friend of ours. Some of those guys don't show up, and it's seen very much as okay that they don't show up because they're somehow doing a great service to our community by lending their star power to the roles of who is a director at the NRA, but they're not really doing any of the work of a director to include attending the meeting. So what we want to see is a much stricter, stronger requirement. Obviously, things happen. If there's 3 meetings a year and you miss one because of a traffic accident or somebody's sick or you're having surgery or some other issue that can be very clearly and reasonably understood, so be it. But if you miss 2 of those 3 meetings in a year, you're ineligible to run. And potentially, if you miss 3, I think someone should very seriously consider being asked to resign from the board if they miss an entire year's worth of meetings.
To address the problem, now, Adam Kraut, let me mention Adam Kraut's statistics here. These are incredible numbers and something I was unaware of. NRA Life member Adam Kraut, he's also an attorney and a Second Amendment activist, has published recent attendance records of all NRA board members. His attendance records from January of 15 to May of 18 show that during that time frame, 15 to 18, we're talking 22% of the board was absent for at least 30% of the meetings, and 4 board members did not attend a single meeting at all. Now, that's a problem. I don't care how you slice it. I don't care what organization you're talking about. That's an issue. You cannot have an engaged board with that level of attendance that is doing the work for the organization, or for that matter, even the management team. And it upsets me a little bit, Rob, that the management team hasn't said, hey, this is BS, we've got to fix this problem, yet continues to let it slide. Even the ones that are being paid, as you mentioned, big bucks to do so. What gives there?
Yeah, it really is. It's one of the most obvious it's one of the most obvious problems inside of the NRA structure. And it speaks to how, honestly, as you mentioned, the management isn't calling it out because the management doesn't want a strong, engaged board. The management benefits with a weak board that isn't engaged because they get to do whatever they want. So if the only people showing up to the meetings are part of the old guard who are, tied into the cronyism, that's how it works.
I would bet money. I may be wrong here, but I would bet money. I don't know the answer to this, but I would bet money, good money, that if you went back and did those numbers, you would see that the old guard is there. You'd see a lot of the same names that are now under, let's say, optics right now. I think you'd see that correlation. There's no question in my mind about that. So your plan to address the problem, you propose establishing a minimum attendance requirement for all members of the NRA Board of Directors. The BOD meets 3 times every year, including the National Rifle Association annual meetings. Under your plan, any director who misses any 2 of these 3 board meetings would lose eligibility to be nominated by the nominating committee for re-election, but could still run by petition if they choose. Directors who miss 3 meetings would be ineligible for re-election by any method. I think that's solid as a rock. And what we're going to do now is we've got a little bit of time here to go into number 4, because we're going to take some time with number 4 and number 5, both of which are very important. So let's set up number 4, which is engagement. Take engagement. Get the membership more involved. How do you intend to do that? And then we'll go deeper into that and cover number 5 in the next segment. Set this one up for us.
Yeah. Well, my summary was simply this. We need to encourage members to learn to vote and to become educated in what goes in, quote unquote, behind the scenes at the NRA. So not just learn what's going on, Democrats versus Republicans, not just vote in national or local elections outside of the gun community, but really to be more involved inside the gun community. And quite frankly, the NRA has benefited the last 10 to 20 years by members not knowing or even being encouraged to know what was going on behind closed doors, what's been going on at these members' meetings that are cut short after the pep rally where members don't really get a chance to speak, what's been going on inside of the directors' meetings that are obviously quite often held in executive session so that the members themselves, the members of the board of directors, can't talk about what goes on in there. So we want to change that whole paradigm. This really speaks to transparency, and that transparency, I believe, will lead to a more engaged American gun-owning community. We'll see higher membership numbers, and we'll see a much more effective NRA across the board.
Boy, I got to tell you, that setup. Yeah, that's exactly what will happen when the membership becomes more engaged. You're going to see the level of activism rise. And by activism, I think you and I both mean, I'm going to try to get in your head here for a minute, doesn't mean simply sending the NRA $25 and saying you did your part, right?
Correct. Real engagement, really actually passionately understanding how you can help the NRA and why you should help the NRA, not just doing what the NRA says in a talking point or in a meme on, Instagram or something.
All right, when we come back after this break, we're going to wrap up the engagement part of it. Very important, and that's you. That's me. That's the members of the organization and have been for many, many years. What can we do better, and how can this organization help us be more engaged? Then we're going to cover 2A focus, because isn't that what it's all about? Armed American Radio's Daily Defense continues right after this.
And now your host, Mark Walters.
Armed American Radio's Daily Defense continues. Segment 4. We are really, truly going to slide into home with this one, but great program so far. If you have any questions about what you've been listening to, mark at armedamericanradio.org. I'll forward them to Rob, and we'll make sure that you get a response. You deserve that, and I know a lot of you have questions. Mark at armedamericanradio.org. We were talking about member engagement. That's goal number 4 out of goal number 5 of SaveThe2A.org. And make sure to visit the site, SaveThe2A.org. Goal number 4, get the membership more involved. Recent reports of the NRA Elections Committee have consistently revealed abysmal voter turnout among the membership. In 2019, the committee mailed 2,452,813 ballots to voting eligible members, and only 145,920 came back. That's pathetic. That's a voter turnout rate of under 6%. It's pitiful. And anybody who's an NRA voting member that didn't vote should be ashamed of that, quite frankly, if they care, because that's a sign, Rob Pincus, welcome back, of not being engaged, isn't it?
Oh, it sure is. That's exactly the point. Is we've got a very small number of American gun owners that are even on the rolls of the NRA membership. We've got an incredibly small number of NRA members who are participating in the elections and some of the other ways that they can be engaged to influence what's going to happen with the committees and with the strategy and with the direction of the NRA. And that plays into the hands of the very few at the very top who want to control the money, most importantly, and the messaging.
And the messaging. But how important is the messaging? How many people have you spoken to? And I know it's an arbitrary. You can't give me an exact number. Maybe you can. I doubt it. I doubt you keep a record of it. I don't. But I can't tell you how many people have said to me, my God, how do I get them to stop sending me scare stuff for money every single day? To me, right, that's not quality member engagement. That's fear-mongering for money. And look, I mentioned this on the radio last week. I'm going to mention it now. In one day, individuals got a letter from the top management, the president of the National Rifle Association, Meadows, saying that they were in great financial shape. Hours later, they got an email that said, and a letter that said, we're going to be destroyed if we don't get your $25 today. And that was not lost on thousands of members. I can't tell you how much email I got going. Look what just came today. Rob, that's terrible messaging. Again, it's awful optics, isn't it?
Well, it is, and that's internal optics. That's not even, we're not necessarily worried about how this all looks to the other side or how this all looks even at this point. This is what SaveThe2A.org is about. We're not coming at this from a let's worry about what they are going to say or what they are going to do. Let's get ahead of this and fix the NRA so the NRA and American gun owners as a unified group can fight against the they that would take away our rights, or the they that would point to a cover-up by the executive leadership of NRA and say, look, even American gun owners don't know what's going on with the NRA. I think that's all very, very dangerous to us. So that engagement point, engaging members properly and in a way that promotes education and knowledge and participation means really getting away from exactly the type of thing that you just mentioned. Get away from, first of all, the constant pandering and constant, pleading for money. When most of the engagement, I understand how that works, right? I understand that Akram McQueen has built a machine for the NRA that just generates a very high return on investment in terms of the generosity of the American gun owners that still support the NRA. So I understand that they're making more money by flooding our email and flooding the messaging with, hey, we need your money and here's why. They tie to the request for money the fear-mongering, the UN is going to send an army in to take your guns. Well, that was never going to happen. It never will happen. But the idea that it might happen triggers a few people to buy that $200 knife imported from China. That's so right. That $195 goes into the coffers of the leadership of the NRA. So the combination of fear-mongering and begging for the fundraising side, that's really what turns people off. So that when something important comes out or when a message goes out, when people are called to vote, for example, they've already written off the communications to a large degree as not worth their time. They're not hearing the important things because of all the static and all of the fear-mongering and the calls for fundraising.
That goes right back to the engagement and right back to management and right back to the size of the board. It all ties together. Are you following along with me here, listener? It really, truly all ties together. You can see how it comes together. Let's go to number 5, and this is the biggest one of all. Goal number 5, returning to exclusive focus on Second Amendment issues. And I love this from the site. You ever see Planned Parenthood advocating for immigration reform? How about the American Diabetes Association taking a stance on foreign policy? Does the NEA get involved with Bitcoin regulation? No, because they're single-issue organizations and they focus their energy on that single issue. The NRA should do the same. Take this one away. You got 4 minutes.
So, yeah, I think the idea is that we need to stop limiting the audience. This goes back to attendance, engagement, everything else. Stop limiting the audience with divisive identity politics. You know, the rhetoric that they're throwing out constantly, which is catchy or which resonates with people that are already on board with the NRA, the people who are already giving money and might give more. And obviously, it's the issue of blind support for one party. When you look at the way the NRA's already come out, you know, a year and a half away from the 2020 elections and said, you better not vote for a Democrat or we'll lose all our guns. You know, we will support President Trump. We will support anybody with an R next to their name on the ballot, regardless of what they do for the next 18 months or what they might do after they get elected. And that kind of messaging just doesn't help. Not only does it hem up the potential membership, because we know there are a lot of people who vote independent. There are a lot of people even who vote Democrat, who are American gun owners, who should be interested in protecting the Second Amendment, and who we need to get involved in a good, strong, vibrant organization, a good, strong, vibrant gun community, so they can get more educated, so that they can influence the people that they're voting for. Because this isn't about just falling in line behind, you know, any party. Specifically, in this case, obviously, we're talking about the Republican Party. It isn't about falling in line with any specific political ideology. You know, we're talking about the conservative ideology. It's really about supporting gun rights. And when you start talking about immigration, and when you start blindly following one political party, and when you talk about abortion or other ancillary issues that may be tied to the core demographic, and obviously the demographic that is most generous with the fund giving over the last 10 to 20 years, you lose the vast majority of American gun owners. There are 100 million American gun owners. They are a diverse group. And essentially, you're turning a blind eye to that inherent diversity when you only focus on the most lucrative part or the most motivated part of your audience. It's that echo chamber preaching to the choir effect that makes you feel good at the top and fills the donation plate, but it doesn't really do the cause as much good as reaching out, opening up the doors, taking off the blinders, and focusing solely on our right to keep and bear arms, as opposed to everything else that's been tied to that concept for the last, decade.
Yeah, and I would add one thing to that. Now, clearly, somebody out there listening, I can hear some of my listeners right now thinking, well, wait a minute. Immigration does have a lot to do with gun rights. If they're successful in bringing in those voters that tend to vote Democrat, we tend to lose elections, and it's that party that's coming after our gun rights. There's a lot of truth to that. What we're saying here is don't let the National Rifle Association focus on that. This show will focus on that. Tom Gresham will talk about those things. Other people will, your partners will bring this to the forefront. Let the National Rifle Association focus on the Second Amendment. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. And it's really important to understand that I'm not saying those other issues aren't important. And I understand that there are some people who are very, very motivated to protect our gun rights and very, very motivated to reform immigration and very, very motivated to protect the unborn children that are affected by abortions, obviously. But what I don't know that those things need to be connected. And I think it does us much more harm than good to have them connected, because guess what? There are people who feel very, very, very strongly about gun rights who also feel very, very strongly about the right of a woman to choose the fate of a fetus. So that we have to respect all of the Americans that are involved in this situation and find the ones that agree with us on gun rights, even if they like a Glock and you like a revolver, or they want, they think training should be 8 hours and you think training should be 6 hours, and I don't think there should be mandatory training. Let's work those details out inside of our community and not just draw a line that says all or nothing with the whole of conservative political ideology.
I'm going to have to stop it right there, Rob. I'm going to have to stop it right there. Unfortunately, we're getting ready to come to the end of the program. It speaks for itself. Great program. I think Mr. Pincus just saved me an hour on a Sunday, because this will be an encore. Very important conversation. Armed American Radio's Daily Defense will get up and do it all again tomorrow. This is why. This is why we're here. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you on the radio. The Second Amendment Foundation has grown into what many believe to be the most important gun rights organization in America. With hundreds of thousands of active members, it is the Second Amendment Foundation defending your rights in courtrooms across the nation. Winning these battles in local jurisdictions all the way to the Supreme Court requires tireless effort and help from you. Please help the Second Amendment Foundation defend your freedoms by joining or donating today at saf.org. Join us at saf.org. Thank you.
What are you cooking tonight? Yo, what's up? This is AAR Shanto, and as you know, like Mark, I have a passion for our gun rights. I also have a passion for great cooking, and I want to invite you to my new Facebook page. There you will get to see and hear what's new in the culinary world. Just go to facebook.com/trythisdishradio or search for Try This Dish Radio on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/trythisdishradio, and remember, it's all about the food.
When seconds count, the police are minutes away, which means if your family's in danger, you'll become their first line of defense. Can you say with 100% confidence that you'll know what to do? What about the gun laws in your state? Do you know them? One wrong move and you'll be the one handcuffed in the back of a squad car. That's why hundreds of thousands of responsibly armed Americans rely on Concealed Carry Magazine for the latest on ever-changing gun laws and life-saving training drills. You'll get unbiased gun and gear reviews and read true stories from real people who carry every day. There's even a quarterly women's section with training and information designed specifically for the female shooter. This is important, which is why when you activate your subscription, you'll get 4 free chances to win a new gun. Just go to oneof4guns.com. That's the number 1 of the number 4guns.com right now to start your subscription and claim the chance to win the free gun of your dreams.